Good morning and welcome to the August 22nd Minnehaha County Commission meeting. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Again, welcome and thank you for being here. Just remind you to silence your cell phones if you haven't done that already, and meeting documents are next to Commissioner Bender. And if you need a listening device, Carol or Craig would be able to help you with that. With that, we'll go into the routine business. The first item is to consider a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously passes. Item 2 is to approve the commission minutes from August 15th, 2017.
Motion to approve with an amendment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with an amendment.
Do you want me just to read the
Here,
amendment?
please.
The amendment is going to be under revising the liaison minutes at the end, and I'll read you what I've come up with, just because it just felt like it wasn't explained really well. Commissioner Heiberger reported on attending the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners, SDACC Board of Directors meeting in Chamberlain, South Dakota on August 9 through 10, 2017. Resolutions were brought forward by Pennington County, with one being chosen to bring to the upcoming SDACC convention. Resolutions prepared by Minnehaha County will have to be voted off the floor at the SDACC convention. That would be my amendment.
And that's okay. Excuse me. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 3 are bills to be paid of $4,252,756.90.
I'd make a motion to pay the bills with one change, please.
Is there a second?
There
with
is.
that change?
My change would be to remove the bill for Dakota Psychology. I think that's what the name of the bill, for $3,281. That bill was actually supposed to be a state bill and not a county bill, so we removed that. And there's just an additional, I'll wait for a second, or there was. My additional comment was just to remind department heads that we can purchase chairs for our office chairs from Pheasant Industries, and just to make sure that I noticed there is one office chair purchased from an outside company, that we make sure that we're checking Pheasant Industries to see if their prices are more competitive than going to other people in our community. So that would be my comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
obviously I'm in support of Cindy's motion. I know there's a reason that we have her on our mental illness board there, so she's on top of it. But I would just comment on our bills. Today's bills include $3.1 million going to the Department of Revenue, which is basically a pass-through from our Treasurer's Department. We had about $270,000 to Armor Correctional Health, which has to do with the jail, and a couple of different bills from them, and another $460,000 from the Highway Department to major projects. And so actually our bills are somewhat less than $1 million. It's, I think, more like $800,000 is our
They might be less, but we
It
still
is
get
less
to
than
pay $4 million.
well, it's a pass-through, sir. I do appreciate it anyway. And I appreciate Cindy keeping an eye on things, too.
I believe with Commissioner Heiberger's change, that makes the bills $4,249,475.90.
Thank you.
Correct? We have a motion and a second to approve that amount. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously
I
passes.
probably shouldn't trust your math, sir, but I did.
He verified it. In fact, she gave it to me, so I know it's right. There are no reports. We also have personnel action. Item A is a consider motion to approve the routine personnel action.
So moved.
Is there
Second.
a motion and a second to approve routine personnel? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously passes. There are no applications for abatement today, no notices and requests. No planning and zoning notices, and no petitions for compromise. We're at the point for opportunity for public comment. If anyone has any public comments they'd like to make on an item that is not on the agenda, we would like to hear from you. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Commissioners. Aaron McGowan, Minnehaha County State's Attorney. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce our new Chief Civil Deputy, Donna Kelly, today. She comes from Illinois. She has served in numerous capacities in private practice. She's been a public defender. She's been the Chief Civil Deputy in McHenry County, Illinois, and also the First Assistant State's Attorney. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience and will be a great addition to our already stellar civil team. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Donna Kelly to you.
Thank you, Aaron. Donna, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, I'm very excited to be here in Sioux Falls. I think it's a wonderful community in Minnehaha County. It appears to be a thriving economy here and just lots of nice people. I see businesses that are opening up, and the state just seems to be fiscally sound and doing very prosperously and wonderfully. And I come from a state of Illinois that I grew up in, and I lived in Illinois most of my life. And I was an assistant state's attorney in McHenry County, Illinois, was a felony prosecutor there for a number of years. Prior to being a felony prosecutor, I was an assistant appellate defender where I represented indigent defendants on appeal for approximately 7 years. I also was an assistant public defender for several years before becoming an assistant appellate defender. After being a felony prosecutor at the McHenry County State's Attorney's Office, I was hired as chief of their civil division, and I served as chief of the civil division of the McHenry County State's Attorney's Office for a number of years, and was promoted to first assistant state's attorney, and served in that capacity until August of 2016. So I'm, again, very enthusiastic and excited to be here and joining Aaron's team at the State's Attorney's Office, and I hope I can assist you here as your attorney at some point. Right now, I'm waiting to be licensed in the Supreme Court Bar of South Dakota, so I'm not yet licensed to practice in the state of South Dakota, but as soon as I become licensed upon motion of admission at some point, I will be looking forward to serving as your counsel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to Minnehaha County and the state of South Dakota. We're excited to have you, and believe me, you'll have plenty to do when you get here. 'Cause
Thank you so much.
Next, does anybody else have any opportunity for a comment that they'd like to pursue? If not, we'll go to the regular business agenda, and the item number 10 is the public hearing and second reading to consider a request on rezoning 17-01 revisions to the 1990 revised zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County. Scott Anderson.
Yes, thank you. Scott Anderson, County Planning Director. Today is a public hearing on a second reading and possible final adoption on a rezoning request 17-1. I'll give you a brief overview of the proposal, and then I'll be here for questions that you may have. I know that there are participants in the crowd for both opponents and proponents, so with that, we'll start the PowerPoint presentation. This is the applicant is Eric Willitson on behalf of the property owners, Doug Bacon. This is approximately located 6 miles west of Sioux Falls at the end of 41st Street and what is commonly called the intersection of the Wall Lake Oil and the end of 41st Street. It's on 2 county paved highways. This is the general location. Right now there is an existing farmstead that you can see off to the right. It's in a shelter belt. The rest of the property consists primarily of agricultural land. There is a segment of floodplain. The Wall Lake outlet flows through what would be approximately the middle of the parcel. This is probably the most important part of the presentation. This is the site plan or the development plan as proposed by the applicant, and I'll walk through this with you. This property consists of 80 acres, and there are 5 sub-areas. So sub-area A is the residential portion of this request. There are approximately 30 home sites, 31 home sites. They range in area approximately 1 to 1.2 acres in size. Sub-area B is an agricultural component to the plan development. That's the existing farmstead, and the applicants have called for that to remain as an ag use, which would allow them to have farm animals, horses, and such. Sub-area C is the commercial area. That was approximately 4 to 5 acres of commercial area. This is located at the intersection of County Highway 151 and County Highway 148, which once again is 41st Street and the Wall Lake Oil that goes down to Parker. Sub-area D is that there's actually 2 areas of sub-area D that are separated by the creek area. Those are areas of multifamily, which commonly I would suppose you'd call those townhomes. There's approximately 30 townhome sites on those 2 parcels. Those also each range from about 4 to 5 acres each. So a total of 8 to 9 acres of sub-area D, which contains multifamily dwelling units. Sub-area E, which is the last of the sub-areas, is a park area for the residents that contains approximately 14 acres. There's an existing pond there. This is located within a 100-year floodplain. So this is a very adequate use, a very appropriate use for floodplain to have park area. They have walking trails. You'll see there's a small playground that's called for. And then there's walking trails that sort of loop around the entire parcel. So that's the overall request. And once again, I will reiterate, this is a fairly large planned development. It's 80 acres. And those are the sub-areas that have been identified and outlined for you by the applicant. So I will go through the pictures. The pictures, I will tell you, there's nothing spectacular about these pictures because it's basically just all farmland. So you're going to see basic views of farmland from County Highway 148, 41st Street, and also I took a couple pictures from the other side looking east. This, once again, sort of shows you the general topography. This overlays, you can see the shelter belt for where the existing farmstead was on the east side. So basically this shows you the parcel. It's primarily farmland. This is looking, I believe, west towards Sioux Falls. This is looking southwest, southeast, standing on Highway 41st Street, 148, looking southeast. This is looking southwest. Once again, you can see the farmland. This is basically shows you that creek floodway area and I will once again remind you, this is the outflow of Wall Lake. So it generally flows in the spring for about 2 to 3 months. This is looking on Highway 151, looking to the north east a bit. But once again, this is looking straight north towards Wall Lake. And I believe that's it. But I will go back to the development plan. There was a public hearing at our July 24th Planning Commission meeting. We had very good discussion among all of the residents, the applicant, the Planning Commission. We discussed this for quite a while. The Planning Commission recommended unanimously to deny the request, so it is coming to you today with a recommendation of denial from the Planning Commission. It is a public hearing, and you, as such, can take any action that you see fit. You can deny the request, uphold the planning commission's recommendation. You can approve the rezoning request. And in that case, if you do decide to approve it, I have submitted also some criteria for each of the sub-areas for your review. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Does anyone have any questions for Scott at this point?
Excuse me, I did forget one thing. We did get a letter of concern from the city of Sioux Falls late yesterday afternoon. I forwarded that to you early this morning. I have provided copies to the applicant and to the surrounding neighbors that are here as well.
Scott, do you want to highlight that since we got it kind of late this morning?
Basically, the letter indicates that the city prefers the condensed version is that they feel that an agricultural use is the best benefit or the best use of the land for the city, and they have concerns that increasing residential development in the area could be a conflict for future expansion of the regional sanitary landfill.
Commissioner Heiberger.
Are there any building eligibilities on this 80 acres?
There are two.
Commissioner Bender. Excuse
That,
me.
and so the concern about the landfill is that the city owns all the land immediately to the east of the subject property. Is that correct for the landfill?
That's correct. They have recently purchased some land to the east of this, of the subject property. And the landfill's generally located to the southeast of the site. Let's see if I can go back one more. So you can sort of see off to the southeast, the beginning of at this picture, you can see the landfill off to the east and to the southeast of this.
Can you put a marker, a little,
Let's see if I can.
so I'm going in the right spot? Pardon me.
Yeah, you're in the right spot. Cindy.
So right here is, this is land that's owned, that is actively
Yes,
part of the
okay.
landfill. It's my understanding that the city has recently purchased this property as well.
Okay. Oh, that's okay.
Any other questions at this point for Scott? Thank you, Scott.
Sure.
Because this is a public hearing, we try to keep it as organized as possible. So we'll start with the proponents of the petition, if you will, and the application, and then we'll go to the opponents. And if I might, just to help a little bit, could you give me an idea how many people who are proponents that will probably speak this morning? Two? Okay, thank you. And opponents, how many people would you raise your hand if you're an opponent to the plan?
One over here,
Three.
too.
4.
Okay, we got 4. Okay, good. Thank you. The petitioner, obviously, and you do need to give us your name and address, and everybody else will need to do the same, if you would, please.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Eric Willardson. I'm with Willardson Lund Engineering here in Sioux Falls. Here on behalf of the Ahrens family. The Ahrens family are also present here this morning. The Ahrens family are the owners of the property. They have farmed the land for the past 50 years or so, since the early 60s. They're at a point now where it's their desire to develop the property in some manner, and as there's no one in the family to take up the farming aspect of it. So we worked with the planning staff. Scott was very helpful in helping us develop this comprehensive plan for development of the property. We think it provides a diverse economic opportunity for Minnehaha County. As Scott indicated, we have, there's multiple uses identified here with the commercial opportunity on the corner. And as Scott indicated, we are on the intersection of two county paved highways, major thoroughfares to Hartford and the city of Sioux Falls. Also, Obviously, the rural residential development, there was some resistance, it seemingly, from some of the surrounding neighbors concerning the density. We are at the over an acre per lot. Certainly willing to maybe compromise that and include some larger lots rather than an acre. That's something we would consider possibly, if this plan is approved, as a plan development district, we would need to bring back a final development plan for consideration, at which time, those type of density issues can be addressed. As Scott indicated, there's also a couple of multifamily areas that we've identified on either side of the drainage way. I think it's probably a stretch to say that there would be some kind of apartment buildings or something like that out there. I guess if you were to approve this, we would entertain an amendment to that sub-area regulation that would limit the number of units to no more than 1 per acre. That would put 4 to 5 units, twin home, fourplex type multifamily, and we think that's more appropriate for this type of a setting. That an apartment building probably is not feasible for the area. I guess there was a couple of that, between that density issue and the secondary item that seemed to always come up with your planning commission was the septic systems. That somehow single-family septic systems are some type of a threat to groundwater, the aquifer. I think that's a misconception. As an engineer in this state for over 30 years, I have never witnessed or heard any kind of evidence that a single-family septic system in drain field has ever contaminated an aquifer or a body of water in the state. So the contention that these septic systems are somehow going to be a threat to the environment, I think is wrong and just doesn't stand the test. I guess we did have a public or a neighborhood meeting, or we tried to have a neighborhood meeting. We sent notices out to all the surrounding neighbors, and was apparently we didn't at the time we didn't think there was any opposition to this because no one showed up. So we've the Aarons have tried to go out to the neighbors and get their take on the development. Again, this density thing came up. I think one of the planning commission members equated this development into the next city in the state of South Dakota, or in Minnehaha County. And it's just, I think that's a stretch, and that there are similar developments very close to this. We don't see the landfill as necessarily a bad neighbor. There are similar developments closer than this one would be to the landfill that have more housing units than this does. Look at the map. We don't feel that the landfill is going to expand in this direction. If you see on the map that they showed it, only a very small portion of what they're going to expand to would come in this direction, and seemingly they screen from view uh, with their existing facilities, and I would assume that that would continue. Certainly, anyone that was a prospective homeowner in this area would obviously realize that they would be moving into an area that's next to the landfill. And again, I guess we don't think that the landfill is necessarily a bad neighbor. I guess lastly, we feel this is an opportunity for economic development for the county. The county is losing literally hundreds of acres a year to the cities. And that has to affect the tax base somehow. We understand agriculture is a very important component in Minnehaha County, but I think there's room for some alternative types of economic development that can add more to the county than this land can as ag. I guess with that, I would entertain any questions that you might have, and I think one representative of the family may want to say a few words as well.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman?
Mark. Is there any questions for Mark, Commissioner
I don't
Berth?
think I remembered to ask this question in our planning commission meeting, but the Dakota Access Pipeline going through there, how does that constrain development on this land? I mean, you have that wetland already, and then you have the pipeline going through there. How does that affect
There are
use
certainly
of the property?
restrictions within the easement of the pipeline. If you'll note on the drawing, the pipeline crosses through the property from the northwest corner to the southeast. So certainly you can't build structures within their pipeline. We don't see it as a safety issue. Pipelines are strewn throughout the country and through many residential neighborhoods and don't pose a threat. So other than not being able to build directly over it, and that's why we've tried to lay it out so that we'll locate around it, but certainly can't be over the top of it. So in that respect, it's there. But I don't think it's a deterrent to the development.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Bender?
I just have a couple clarifying questions. So you mentioned that there might be a possibility to amend the plan so there's no more than one residence per acre. Is that what I heard you say?
One unit, one housing unit per acre on the multifamily.
So that would be the areas that are sub-area D?
Sub-area D.
So you aren't going to have fourplexes then?
Well, you could, because it's a 4 acre or 5 acre parcel, so you could put 4 units in there, or 5.
4 or 5 fourplexes?
No,
Okay, I just am
4 or
trying to
5
make sure
units.
that I
So
understand what
maybe
you're saying.
there's, well, and I have an alternate plan with me. I don't know if Scott, if there's any way we can do it, but it just indicates instead of having multiple buildings there, it's, I think on the 5 acre parcel, it's a triplex and a duplex or twin home type thing, and on the other one, it's a fourplex or 2 twin homes. Again, that goes back to the septic system. I mean, we're talking a drain field and septic tank and drain field type system, and state law would restrict that to 1 acre per unit.
Okay, so right now you're saying state law would not allow what you've got drawn, what's drawn up here?
State law would not, well, that's conceptual. State law, I think what Scott has written into the sub-area regulations or changed it to was 5 units per acre for sub-area D, and we're saying that needs to be changed to 1 unit per acre in sub-area D for the multifamily.
Other-
But again, and again, what that will do is reduce the density. And the concerns were about density and septic systems, which the density is no more than the other rural developments. We just think this provides some additional opportunity with the park and recreation area for the people, the commercial development on the corner, which we think would coincide with similar developments to the north and to the east. We just think this is a good economic development plan for the county.
Commissioner Bender, do you have another question?
I do. I don't want to hog all the questions. So you had indicated that, that if we looked on the map, that we would see that there are larger housing developments adjacent to the landfill. And from what I see one set of what looks like maybe 6, 7 houses that is directly to the east of the landfill. But then there's nothing else that's directly adjacent. There's houses obviously to the north of 267th Street. Is that correct?
I don't know if it's, I don't remember what the name is, if it's Country Estates or whatever, just to the northeast of the landfill. That area there, which is about the same size as this, has over 60 units in it.
But it's not adjacent, and it's further
And
north.
this isn't adjacent either.
It's directly adjacent to the land that the city owns for the landfill expansion.
Just across the street.
No, it's directly adjacent to it.
Next door.
That is.
This is across the street.
Those are across the road and further north. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't
Right.
something I was missing. So,
And just to the, there are other rural residences to the east, immediately to the east of the landfill,
right,
that-
those 7 or 8 or whatever, however many there might be there.
probably 10 or 12. I
Other
see 1, 2,
questions
3.
for Mark? Scott, I have a question, if you might, that I should have asked while you were up there, and I apologize. When you said there were 2 building eligibilities, how does that plan fit into the overall 80-acre?
Well,
Plan.
there are 2 building eligibilities. In addition, so there's the existing farmstead, and then, which is sub-area B. There's 2 other available building eligibilities, which were for this 40-acre parcel, or the 80 acres, 1 per 40. So should the rezoning go through, and if this property was zoned to a planned development, those 2 building eligibilities would disappear, would
Okay.
be no longer available. They would be taken off the books. We would follow this plan then, and those building eligibilities are gone.
They're not transferable, or?
No.
No, it has to be transferred to the same owner in an adjacent property. And as I understand it, this is the entire holdings for this family. They don't own other property someplace else that they could transfer it to.
That was my question, okay.
Thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't ask that before. Other questions for Mark? The family is represented. Would you like to make any comments? You'll have, excuse me, have to identify yourself, please, and give us your address.
Yes, I'm Doug Bacon, 11 Woodland Drive, Humboldt, Iowa, and married to Lori Aarons Bacon and brother-in-law to Al and Jan sitting back here. The family's actually owned the land for about 60 years, 60 plus years, and Lori was born and raised there. Al was just a small child when they moved there. I've been part of the family for about 26 years, and ever since I've been part of the family, they've talked about some development on this property of what type has gone back and forth over the years. A few years ago, we hired Eric to work on a development for this 80 acres. When we started moving forward with that, part of the process is that we visit with adjoining landowners, send them a notice, do a community meeting. Al and I drove around and visited with all of the landowners that we could catch that were adjoining. Mr. Pestrello would be just to the northwest, and he's the one that we did not catch. But otherwise, I think we talked to everyone. Those that were out of state, we called and talked to them on the phone. Then we turned around in April of this year, April 23rd. We did a meeting, a neighborhood meeting at the Prairie West Branch Library on a Sunday afternoon. Nobody showed up. So I guess after visiting with everyone and no one coming there, it was a little bit of a surprise to us when we came to the planning and zoning meeting and had some resistance from the neighbors. I wish that we could have visited with them prior to that and, caught their feelings and shared what we were all thinking of doing. A couple of the concerns during that planning and zoning meeting, which, by the way, the planning and zoning staff approved our plan, took it to the board, and the board turned it down, but the staff was in favor of our plan that you see here. A couple of the concerns, of course, were the density and the number of people there. A couple of the people that got up and spoke live, I believe, southwest of our property, and they didn't like the density, and yet where they live, there's 5 homes within 200 yards of each other. So I don't fully understand that. If they used a housing eligibility or housing eligibility, they could have built further away from each other. And as far as the other locations near ours, just to the west of us, about 3/4 of a mile on the gravel road on the north side to the west, there's 20 homes within about a 30-acre area. And then you saw on the map from the landfill commission that that other one is probably, before they purchased the property next to us, we were probably the same distance from the landfill as that one to the northeast. And there's 60-some homes in that one. And they're just a mile to the east of us, a mile east of our east property line. So I guess, you know, there's precedence in the area for developments like this. There really is. And as far as the landfill, I certainly it's a concern. You know, I mean, we don't want the landfill moving towards us and developing it there, I guess. But on the other hand, we've been a half mile from the landfill, and as the family can remember, we don't ever remember a bunch of plastic bags in our building site. You know, the building site there is the homestead, and that's a half mile from the north edge of the actual mound. And we just don't get garbage up that direction. I don't know. They've done a nice job keeping it clean. So I guess in the future, I don't see that as a issue for the people that might build here either. And I guess as far as, you know, tax base, you know, currently it's zoned agriculture, 300,000 assessed value or whatever it is, 150, whatever it is, versus the possibility of, what, 3 million plus for assessed value, tax base for the county. Seems would be a plus to me. I guess that's about all I have. I would just hope respectfully request your approval of this permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Does anybody have any questions for him currently? Thank you. Other proponents who want to speak, or otherwise we'll go to opponents. Opponents who would like to speak are welcome to come to the microphone now if they would like. There were 4 of you, so somebody's going to move, I hope.
Brian Duffy, 26748 463rd Avenue. Concerns is the pipeline. You know, if it does break, which I hope it never does, but where the commercial part is, that's probably going to be all asphalt. I mean, they're going to come in and tear up all that for that reason. And the water usage. I've talked to World Water, and the line that supplies the 4 houses that are on 463rd Avenue, we're on the end of the line, and that line ain't big enough to supply that. They'd have to have a new line that would come 7 miles from the tower to support that. And then the creek they got running through the pond, I don't know what comes out of Wall Lake, but you know, the cows that are around there that go into the creek and all that. Not a lot of people play in the creek, and I don't know if the pond's gonna be used for swimming or just decoration. And another concern is the landfill's right on the corner. You can put garbage a half mile from the road. Whether they go either way. And I know Saturday morning it was awful calm and dewy, and you could smell it. Having coffee on the porch in the morning.
Okay. Any questions for Brian? Excuse me again, Commissioner Karski.
Could you just point to your property? Is it on?
Yes, if you look to the north, 463rd Avenue, It's underneath the corner map. On that map they gave you, it's a little 2-acre parcel, which I got off of the 40-acre housing eligibility.
So
There.
it's on the, to the north of
Okay,
this.
463rd, come down to,
Yep, okay.
that's
But,
right,
and you're where?
I'm right there.
Right there, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you. Any other opponents who would like to speak, please?
Yeah, Mike Cipher, 26443 461st Avenue. This is always interesting when we get into these deals. You heard the wonderful word precedence once again. Last time I was here for the horse deal north of town and at our planning commission, we heard from Scott, this is just like the horse deal we did up north. And Eric got up and said, this is just like the horse deal we did up north. This is nothing like that, nothing at all. We are creating a town in rural Minnehaha County, and towns should have requirements, such as sanitary sewer districts. And Mr. Willitson brings up septic systems, and members of the planning commission be opposed to septic systems. Well, really we're not. But just looking at the recent woes of the Sioux Falls annexation problems, if you take a place like this, and if you don't put in a sanitary sewer district, all the sewers run out of the backs of the houses to a septic tank, which is fine. However, if you ever want to annex that and put them in a sanitary sewer system, how do you do that? Rip up the front of everybody's house? Rip up the street? I mean, there's a reason you require sanitary sewer districts when you're doing developments, and that is one of them. When we get out in this area, this is the Wall Lake outlet. Wall Lake has an interesting history of housing developments. It was called Golden Shores on the north side of Wall Lake. It was for 156 houses. And actually, the Planning Commission said, fine, you can do that if you can be part of the Wall Lake Sanitary Sewer District. And at that time, of course, your federal dollars paid for the sanitary sewer district around Wall Lake as a lake improvement project. And, but it was a minimal system. But we said, no, you cannot do that if you cannot be part of that sanitary sewer district. So they built the number of houses that they could along the lake to access that, which is fine. That's the way it should be. And then you talk about all these housing developments out in this area. Most of those are pre-1985. 1985, we put in an ordinance that said one housing eligibility per 40 acres, right? Because the county was seeing these sporadic housing developments popping up around the county. And they saw that, as I see that, as not being appropriate because you're not controlling it. This is about density zoning. If you're going to create a town, it needs to look like a town. And if the ordinance doesn't fit, then change the ordinance, is the way it should be done. When and precedent's made, but if you were to approve this, for example, so why can't Mike and Linda Grace across the road with their 80 acres do 160 to 60 housing units, call some recreational area there in the corner where that Wall Lake outlet goes through. Mr. Mueller, who I think is going to talk earlier, he's right across the road, kitty corner. He has far more floodplain on his land than this 80 acres. So he could say, well, if there's going to be 60 houses there, why don't I put 60 houses here? And how can you tell them no? You know, like say, I listened at the last meeting, a lawyer get up here and say, well, precedence isn't important. Well, as a non-attorney spokesperson, I think it is. Because what else is a judge going to base their rulings on other than the performance of the county in past acts and following our ordinances? It's extremely important. Now, you know, taxes and development, I know that's important to the county. The last I checked, every house north of 57th Street in Sioux Falls, you get something from that. All the new houses that are being built in Hartford, Del Rapids, Brandon, all over, are rural housing. And I think you're going to see a spur in rural housing this next year, fundamentally due to the rural ag economy. $2.80 corn doesn't pay for many bills. And a lot of these farmers are going to have to start selling a few assets, and the number one assets landowners in Minnehaha County hold is building eligibilities. And you're going to see more of those. But for this development, though, to happen, is just, it just goes against our basic fundamental density zoning ordinance. and it's not appropriate. I think I pretty well covered most of the points that I wanted to make sure that I covered. But again, like I say, it was interesting to me to listen to Sioux Falls annexation problems and you start thinking, we dealt with one of the Sioux Falls housing developments. I'm sure they're trying to annex. And then the county starts dealing with issues like 6 chickens and whether they're appropriate or not, you know. That was just, we spent a half hour on 6 chickens. But to me, this is just a fundamental density zoning issues. And all these developments out there, because I remember Country Acres, which is 2 miles to the east of this, we moved here in 1977. The lots were, we talked to the realtor about a lot in Country Acres. That's 40 years ago, almost, so, or 30 years ago.
Thank you, Mike.
That is why I'm opposed to this, because fundamentally, as far as I'm concerned, it does not follow the spirit of our county zoning ordinance and our density ideas, so.
I think Commissioner Bender has a question.
I do. I appreciate your comments. And you might have just clarified the statement I was going to ask you about, because the Planning Commission approved this, and not the Planning Commission, the Planning Office, excuse me, and viewed it as in accordance with our ordinances. And you said it was not accordance, but
In
you
the
just
spirit
said
of the ordinance.
spirit of the ordinance.
Yes,
so.
because, you know, the planning office unfortunately is wrong every once in a while. They just are. Just like we're wrong once in a while. I mean, that's just, because we don't see this, and if you look at who's on the planning commission, most of us live out in the county, they're rural residents. A few of them live in Crooks, we have a town person too, but when we look at this, we look at, okay, so what's appropriate? And if I'm like say, if I'm a landowner in Minnehaha County, to me, you are giving people eligibilities. And county commission, why are you giving away my eligibilities and lowering my eligibility values? That's what you're doing when you do this. And people may not look at it that way, but as a landowner, that's how I would certainly look at it. You know, there are means if you've got owned 2/4 of land, you've got 8 housing eligibilities, you can roll all those right to a corner, and we have a couple of those developments in the county which are nicely done. All the eligibilities are moved over. There's 8 houses in the corner of a section. That's great. The rest of the farmland is open. And you're preserving ag land, yet providing opportunity for people to live in the country. And that was, to me, that's how it's supposed to work.
Thank you, Mike. Scott, do you have a comment?
I do. I just want to clarify for everyone, the commission and the audience, that the planning department doesn't approve something. We write a staff report, we take it to the planning commission, we have a public hearing. So we're just making a recommendation. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that there was no approval granted by the county planning departments for everyone here at home in the commission. And we look at this as, does it meet all the criteria to allow for a planned development? And is the criteria all met? Yes, it was. And that's why we take it to the planning commission. We have a public hearing, because when we're writing a staff report, we may not, I mean, certainly we anticipate there may be some neighborhood concerns, but that's why we have public hearings, so we can hear all of the issues.
Scott, only if I could, Chair?
Sure.
While you're up there, are we approving a site plan or just a zoning change? Or is it one and the same?
Well, you're approving a zoning change, and when you have a planned development, it's a little bit different than when you rezone something to the C commercial district. There's a list of permitted uses and conditional uses. A planned development's a little bit a horse of a different color, because you're approving a concept plan that outlines specific uses. And that's why each sub-area has specific uses, and you're basically, each planned development is like a new little section of the zoning ordinance, because you're allowing that planned development with specific densities and specific uses.
Okay, so don't leave yet. Going back to Mr. Willison's comments about I'm still trying to get my mind around that, changing it from the multifamily to single family, is that a requirement based on state statute where you can't have fourplexes on that, the way it's drawn up? Is that right?
Well, I think what Eric Willison's intent is just basically to reduce that density down to an overall density of 1 housing unit per acre.
Plus.
And there would be 4 acres there, so, you know, basically he's limiting to, let's say, 1 fourplex, as I understand it.
one fourplex on all 4 acres?
Yeah.
Okay,
So you'd
versus
end up
4
with a.
fourplexes.
Yeah, you'd end up
Okay.
with basically an overall density of one housing,
It'd still be a
one dwelling
fourplex,
unit.
but it would be on the same number of acres
Yeah.
as well. Okay, now I got it. One other question. Street access was brought up at the
Oops, sorry.
zoning meeting. Are there, because this is a county highway, we've got 2 off of 148 and 1 on 151. What are the standards for access off of a county road like this?
Well, they would have to get an approach permit from the county highway department. And and it was routed to the county highway department. They had expressed they didn't have any issues with the county highway 151, which is the Wall Lake oil. But on the other section of the road, they would prefer to see one approach off the highway there. And so there may be some revisions, some overall, if it was approved, there may be some revisions to the concept plan where you may only see one way in and out of there. That's doable. This is a little bit, when you look at the actual lay of the land and the specific conditions that are out there, it's sort of a unique situation because of that floodway that goes directly through.
Build a bridge.
Yeah, I mean, you're either gonna have to get a bridge to go across there or somehow redesign your plan a little bit, where, you only have, one way in and out of there. I think that's something that could easily be worked out with the county highway department eventually.
So it's at our level to
Yes.
approve. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Scott, I know I can ask you this any day I want to, but would they be required to have a road district within this subdivision? Is that a requirement in plan developments now?
It would be up to the responsibility, and I think that's written into the guidelines, the plan development, sub-area regulations that they're responsible for maintaining the roads.
Thank you. Any other questions for Scott?
These would be, since we're talking a little bit about roads, should you approve it, and I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page, because all of these roads, the internal subdivision roads, because they come off a paved county highway road, all of the roads within this subdivision would be required to be hard surfaced, which would need to meet our ordinance requirements. So no gravel roads, they'd have to be paved asphalt, 4 inches of asphalt with the appropriate underlying base of gravel, but they would be paved roads.
Question?
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna reserve my questions until we finish hearing from the opponents, just because we haven't
Well, I
finished.
think we've clarified a couple of the
Okay.
terms, so to speak. Do you have any other questions,
I'll wait.
Dean? With that, is there any more opponents who would like to speak? Please, come forward.
Wayne Prostrello, 26681, 463rd Avenue, and I'm just northwest of the intersection.
Okay.
When I bought my land 20-some years ago, it was the idea that you had eligibilities available to us. I own 3. I own 2 now because we built a house out there. My idea was to never have no more neighbors except, in this case, 2 at that location and 2 across the road from me. If this goes up there, like I said, it's a small little town. I want the rural area to be left alone. It's my dream to be out there and not have 100 people, 150 people move out there in the corner. It makes it very dangerous for the intersection. It's a very busy road. Both roads are very busy with the landfill and the construction that goes on that area. And the farm trucks are always rolling. I said I wanted to have a peace of mind out there. And mine was to have 2 eligibilities for mine, which are going to be used anyway. But the corner should be left agricultural. And the water is still running right now today from the rain yesterday.
Thank you, Wayne. Does anybody have any questions for Wayne? Thank you, sir. I think there was one more if they'd like to speak, or if if it's already been discussed, that's fine also.
Tom Gossett, 26753 463rd Avenue. I moved out there 5-6 years ago. Pretty much the same reason Wayne did. I lived over in that other development by the landfill over there. It got too packed. When I moved in there, there was 4 or 5 houses on the back road in there. As it filled in, I wanted to get more out into the country. And I looked for places, and I use a housing eligibility thing, thinking that the county's not gonna let anyone do developments around me. And my biggest concern with that, there's 4 acres behind me that the farmer owns directly behind my property, and plus all the other land around there. If you let, it's an old farmstead. Where the 2 houses are, you go directly west there's an old farm place out in there. What if he wants to develop that and put a driveway right around my property? Then I'm gonna have a development over here on the corner, a development behind me, and who knows how many other developments we're gonna end up having in that area. And I always thought that the reason for the housing developments was to keep that down to a certain number. I've got another housing eligibility. I'm not planning on using it. Jeff, to the north, he has one. He's not gonna use it because we don't want any more houses in that area. And something nobody mentioned, I don't think anyone has mentioned it, they're gonna have a substation right across to the north. That creates a lot of noise, safety issues, and no one's seemed to mention anything about that in this meeting, but I just thought I'd point that out, that that's a horrible place for development. And I think with the 2 housing eligibilities, build 2 houses there, that's what they want to do, and leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any other comments? Any questions for Tom? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I believe we've heard from everybody who wanted to be heard. Is anyone else, just to make sure, want to add comments or responses to some of the other comments that were made? No one's moving, so I'll turn it back to the commission for action. Commissioner Heiberger.
I have a couple comments, maybe questions too. One, I'm disappointed that the highway is not here. There isn't anybody that I could tell what's from here from highway, just from reading what they had said, you know, about the roads. I sat on the Sioux Empire Housing a few years back, and one of the concerns that we had, it was in the city of Sioux Falls, was that there was only one access in, and they said and it was an issue. We were trying to figure out, I think, Dean, you were on there possibly the same time I was, and it was a huge issue that we discussed regularly, that there's only one access to get into these houses, and there was only a couple of houses in that development. They talked about snow removal, they talked about emergency response, getting in and out. They said this is not the way you want to build a development. So that was a huge discussion. So that would be, I would have liked to talk to the highway department, because they don't want anybody coming out on 148. And how many accesses would they allow on 151, and how are you going to get all those people out of there? I mean, that would be one of my concerns. I don't have a problem with septic systems. I have one myself, but I do have a problem with that many septic systems, just because of the same reason somebody, maybe it was Mr. Cipher, said that this is a great plan. I love this. This looks beautiful, but this belongs next to Sioux Falls, not out in the middle of the country where they have building eligibilities. I also have building eligibilities. I live in the country. I think it's really important for us to maintain those, because if we start doing developments in the country where we have set up our ordinances to protect agricultural land, and we start putting these in pockets around, we've just blown up our ordinance. Those ordinances are worth, those building eligibilities are worth money. Example, 6 acres just sold recently close to me for $191,000. Now, I'm not gonna say every 6 acres is gonna sell for that. I think this was probably a unique situation. But they have value, and if you put, I don't know how many houses in that little spot, the people that live around them that have building eligibilities, those prices are they're gonna drop, because why would I build across the street if I can build in here, and in that building eligibility I can get an acre, and it isn't as expensive. and the streets are gonna be paved, and you're gonna destroy that, that equity that that farmer has in their land. I also think it's important that the farming agriculture is maintained. I just don't think this is the appropriate place for this. I think we should maintain our ordinances, and as Scott said, it's not that he approves this. Yes, it would fit. This would also fit close to Sioux Falls because it meets all the requirements. It doesn't mean it's something we have to approve. Trying to look at my notes and see if I missed anything else I wanted to talk about at this point. I think it's important that we preserve agriculture. It might be possible to rezone that corner on 2 highways for commercial and put a gas station in there or something at some point. Another comment was made about traffic. If that's a highway would have been here, we could have asked about what type of traffic is on that road. As you know, they are going to have probably tractors going down that road. I just, I don't know that this is an appropriate location for that many houses to be put in. Close to Sioux Falls, where it's going to be, or close in a joint jurisdiction where it's eventually going to be annexed into the city makes a whole lot more sense than this far out from Sioux Falls at this point.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Barth?
Obviously, it's rural residents are always concerned about changes in the area, but changes are going to happen. Clearly, this isn't the same as it was 60 years ago or 100 years ago or 150 years ago. And, if in the spirit of keeping Minnehaha rural areas rural, I suspect we would have objectors to a large dairy going into this area, or perhaps even a solar farm or a windmill or a gravel pit or whatever goes on. And, on a philosophical basis, I sometimes wonder if we should allow any new additional dwellings in the rural area. Build in the city if you want to live in a house. Then you get to have planning and zoning and all those things taken care of. It's a rural agricultural area. It's not a museum. It's going to change. That said, I think that I'm interested if Mr. Willitson has a alternative proposal of what that might be, but I don't think I'll be voting for this proposal right now.
Well, I think the alternative plan would have to go back through planning and zoning if, in fact, they want to present that. Commissioner? Go ahead. Dean, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I look at property rights and feel that, coming into today's meeting, that as a landowner that you have distinct and very set property rights. So you own the land, you should be able to, within reason, do what you want to on your own property. That being said, 30-plus years ago, as Mr. Cipher said, we did change our county statutes so that we don't run into the issues of sprawl as we are. Just a year ago, it seems like longer than that, I was on the annexation task force for the city, and we're looking at properties or developments similar to what this one is being proposed at, that when they were done were 3 miles out of the city. Now they're within the city boundaries, and the people that live there are truly struggling to with annexation because, well, the cost, and they don't want to be. And we have issues with sprawl and moving this out into the county. I think there is a better plan. It goes against my philosophy of landowner rights and being able to, within reason, do what you want. But I go back to the standard of reasonableness of we've been doing it this way for 30-some years. We do have to protect eligibilities, and it does come down to those standards that I'm going to be voting against approving this.
Thank you. Commissioner Bender?
I've struggled with these. I struggle with these every time, and I visited with Scott Anderson this morning to try to, better understand, where we were as far as our ordinances and what his office was thinking about this. But I would have to say that I don't think I'll be supporting this either. I am concerned about the landfill. I don't think that the proximity of the landfill makes this an appropriate place for this kind of density of development. And, you know, I've been here long enough now to know that as land uses change, people get upset about it, and rightly so. And I think that that people, if this project did move forward, that we'd hear a lot of complaints in here in the city. We'd hear a lot of complaints about the landfill. And so that does concern me, and I was concerned about the road access, and the whole issue of housing eligibility rights is also something we hear about a lot. And you know, and there have been times where we've approved, you know, different kinds of projects that basically go against that, but I don't think that this is one. I do think that this is the type of project that would be more appropriate if it was closer to a city. The size of it concerns me, so.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny.
But should it be to uphold the planning commission? Is that?
You want it to be?
It should be a positive motion if possible.
Okay, I'll make a motion to uphold the planning commission's decision.
Second.
Okay. Are there any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say to, you know, if you have an alternative that consider what it might be and bring it forward. And a roll call, sir.
We can do that. Scott, just a clarification, if they were to bring another plan, I know that needs to go through planning and zoning, but there's a time frame, correct, that they have to wait?
Wait 1 year.
Okay. I wanted to clarify that so that people knew that.
Mr. Chairman, would it be better then for us to defer action and allow them to bring something forward in less than a year?
From a planning aspect, it's a cleaner process just to go ahead and deny the request or uphold the planning commission's decision, and we start all over again, because the issue with sending this all back to the planning commission is it gets sticky with notifying neighbors, and I just would start it all over again, and that way we are re-notifying neighbors, re-advertising in the paper. Everyone we've followed all the steps we need to.
Thank you.
Scott, may I ask a question?
Certainly.
The standard of 1 year, is that set by the county or is that set by statute?
Pardon me, I didn't, the
The
standard?
statute of having to wait 1 year to.
Oh, that's in
reapply.
our zoning ordinance.
Okay. That might be something we should look at. I mean, 1 year seems like an awfully long time. I don't know why that standard is there, but okay.
Excuse me. Mark, you'll have to come to the
Eric.
microphone, please.
What if you just let it die? There's no decision made, the issue dies for a lack of a motion, and so no decision made, then does the zoning, waiting a year then apply still? I mean, if we don't do anything, then there's not been a denial. Let it die, let us bring it back something else. We don't have to wait a year.
I think I'll need a legal opinion on that one, just to be clear. Judy, do you want to try that?
And I don't have the ordinance in front of me right now, but, yeah, but it wouldn't be a denial under the ordinance, so.
Mr. Chair, I'll let Scott answer first.
Scott?
I need to come back and re-correct myself. I just pulled the zoning ordinance. It's 6 months. So they only have to wait 6 months.
Okay.
And I wanted to just verify that. I went and pulled the zoning ordinance, and it's 6 months, so.
Okay, that's better.
My gut feeling tells me that 6 months is more of a reasonable time frame to redevelop, even if it seems too long. It's part of our current ordinance. We wouldn't have any problems with the legal aspect of this, or concerns from the neighbor, or frankly from planning and zoning to have an opportunity if they wish to do that. Any other comments? If not, we will do it on roll call, and again, this is to approve the planning and zoning's decision, correct?
Uphold the plan.
Up- well, uphold, approve, jump off a mountain, whatever.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Heiberger.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 to approve the planning and zoning's decision. Again, you have 6 months, I believe, if that's correct, which I'm sure it is, to come back with a plan if you wish. Thank you for your patience. Item 11 is to authorize the chair to sign a 2017 agreement for a middle school diversion officer and disproportionate minority contact coordinator in the amount of $65,243 between the county and LSS of South Dakota. You're not Jamie.
I'm not. Good morning, Commissioners. Carol Muller, Commission Administrative Officer. Before you today is a renewal, not a renewal, but it's another year of some projects that we've been doing very successfully within our juvenile diversion program. So today we are asking you to authorize the chairman to enter into and sign this agreement. It's an agreement with Lutheran Social Services in which they will provide diversion services for 8 to 15 youth at any time throughout the school year. And this is one of a few different programs that we take and offer for juvenile diversion. In addition, this person, who happens to be Annie Brokenleg and is here today, is our racial and ethnic fairness coordinator. You've often heard that referred to as DMC for disproportionate minority. I think we like this new title much better than the DMC person. And will be overseeing the work plan for addressing racial and ethnic disparities at the different decision points in the juvenile justice system and collaborating with community members and service providers to reduce disproportionality. And we've had some great successes. It's amazing to see the numbers that have been attending different programs. And if you'd like to have Annie speak, I know that she'd be more than happy to do so.
I think she should after being here for an hour and a half. You need to speak.
Annie Brokenleg, Lutheran Social Services. So yeah, I will just highlight some of the things that we've been able to do with this contract in the last year. As Carol mentioned, we were able to change the name from DMC to REF. It's a little bit more with that acronym, racial and ethnic fairness is what it stands for. It's a little bit more accessible to the community. It's been more accessible when we're trying to leverage funding to pay for our trainings that we've been doing in the last year. In addition to that, I think it's definitely more accessible to the families and the youth that we work with in the juvenile justice system. It kind of lays out exactly what we're trying to do, which is, reduce the amount of youth of color that are in the juvenile justice system. So in the last year, we've been able to train over 400 professionals in the community on cultural competency, on working with youth of color in the juvenile justice system, and just raising awareness about this issue. We have had 4 different trainings with another one coming up on Thursday. We had our annual conference in October. We held a spring conference in March that highlighted culturally inclusive programming across the state. And then we just held a summer training series over the course of 3 different sessions throughout the summer. And then like I just mentioned, we have our annual conference here on Thursday that will be held at Augustana. And we've been able to partner with the school district. We've been able to partner with Augustana and through a grant through the South Dakota Humanities Council to really make this one of the biggest events we've had. And we've got almost 200 people registered for the conference, which is great. It's double the amount that we've ever had attend one of these events. So very, very exciting there. Also, I would say with this contract, I think one of the most important things is our middle school diversion program, where we still see at least 3/4 of the students being successful and not having any additional offenses while they're on this program. And I think if we look at the juvenile justice system, we see that early intervention and diversion programs are really the most impactful for youth to ultimately be successful and stay out of the system. And so I really, continue to be very passionate about that piece of this contract. And what's been really unique in this last year to have the position of being the REF, it used to be DMC, now REF coordinator and the diversion officer, is I can get my diversion students involved with that work, and they've been able to attend our monthly coalition meetings where they get to see different programming that's happening in the community that could potentially benefit them. And then with that, it's great because they also have their ability to do service learning opportunities to help me with all of these conferences and events. So that's great. And they get to see all the people in the community that actually care about them and their outcomes. So yeah, and then a lot of new exciting things in the year ahead. We just got approval yesterday we had applied through a subgrant through the state to attend Georgetown University Racial and Ethnic Disparity program where there'll be a team of us. It's actually myself, Judge Cutler, Carol James, the state's attorney, Andrew Robertson, the public defender, and Officer Jason Leach with the Sioux Falls Police Department. And we'll be going to Georgetown to study for a week with experts across the country on how to reduce disparities among youth of color. So it's very exciting, and we'll create a project and bring it back here to the community. So thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
In your packet of information, we have an email from the Deputy State's Attorney's Office and Carol James about her dedication and commitment. If you have any questions about the program, I think we're all looking for ways to divert some of our biggest public safety and juvenile concerns, so I'd look for a recommendation.
Make a motion to authorize you to sign this agreement, sir.
Second with a question.
Go ahead.
Carol, the letter that we got from Jamie says that successful completion of the program can earn the county money from the state once a year. Do you have any idea? I
sure.
mean, this isn't a grant-funded thing. It is funded.
No. What it is once a year. And matter of fact, it just went in the last 7 to 10 days. Was sent in by Carol at the state's attorney's office, and we receive reimbursement. There is a certain amount of money that has been set aside statewide, and they look once a year at all those that came in, and we could receive up to a $250 reimbursement for each youth that successfully completes the program. However, if there's more than that, then it is prorated down to the counties. Last year, it was $48,000. I think they're anticipating about $42,000 this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Carol? If not, we have a motion and a second to approve the contract. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Good luck. Let us know how your educational enhancement goes. Item 12 is to authorize the chair to sign a lease agreement between the county and Max Catering for the admin building coffee shop / lunch service operation.
Good morning. Earlier this summer, Dakota Abilities gave notice to us that they would no longer be providing coffee shop, cafe, lunch services to us located within our building on the first floor of the county administration building. So we know that there's a need for that. We know that there's a lot of people who stay in for lunch. We know that people who are coming in for jury duty need a place to grab food on a very short notice that's out there. And so we have a lot of people who actually go through there during the day. We put out an RFP for this, and we had a total of 3 vendors that applied. We did interviews, we did reference checks, and had some great conversations, and are making a recommendation to award this to Max Catering, and the representative for that is Zach Halstead. Zach was selected as he will provide a good variety of items for breakfast, coffee, and lunch, along with average lunch special prices of $4.75 to $5, and sandwiches and salads between $3 and $5. Mr. Halstead has been in business in Brookings for over 15 years, and his experience includes a similar type of operation inside the Brookings Library, and Nature's Paradise Health Food, a Hobo Hut food truck that he has, and bakeries. For those of you that are familiar with Nick's Hamburgers, he does the buns for Nick's Hamburgers that are up there, and he does various caterings for other businesses, weddings, special events, and has done some work in Sioux Falls with the guards. So the hours at minimum will be from 7:30 to 2 o'clock with an opening date of next Monday, August 28th, and everybody is very excited about having that available. This is a 2-year contract with a 1-year extension available to it. So with that, we would ask for a motion to award and authorize the chairman to sign the contract.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you to the committee who did the interviewing process. We appreciate that. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Max Catering for the admin building coffee shop lunch program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 13 is to consider the following actions regarding disposal of surplus property for Minnehaha County. Melinda.
Good morning, Melinda Storley, Commission Assistant. This is an annual event. The public auction of surplus property for local and educational organizations will be this September 23rd. Minnehaha County staff have combined a list of items from the various Minnehaha County departments. And from that list, we were able to come up with 4 separate motions that need to be addressed regarding the declaration and disposition of these surplus items.
Thank you.
You want to take them individually or as a whole?
I think we have to, is that correct?
Okay,
Okay, I think we have to do them individually.
not a problem.
So item A is a motion to declare the property on Exhibit A as surplus to transfer to other county departments.
So moved.
And to declare the Exhibit A surplus and transfer to other departments.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions? If not,
I just have a comment, and there's several sedans on there, and I know that during budget hearings, there was a department that was looking for a pilot car, and if there would have been a great one on there, I would think, but it wasn't requested, so I guess we'll just go without.
Good point.
yep, good point. Back to the motion. We have a motion to approve item A for Exhibit A. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item B is to motion to declare the property of Exhibit B as surplus for donation to outside agencies.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions?
Requires unanimous consent.
Correct. All those in favor of item B, Exhibit B, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item C is to declare property on Exhibit C as a surplus for public auction and to authorize the auditor to publish the notice of sale.
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve item C. All those in favor say aye.
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 Item C unanimously passes. Item D is to declare property on Exhibit D as surplus for disposal.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item D for surplus. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Thanks, Melinda.
You're welcome, thank you.
For Melinda wants, she gets.
Item 14 is county liaison reports. Yes.
I have a couple again. I had a couple of conference calls this week. JDAI State Conference, which is Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiatives, will be this September 25th through the 26th, and which is a Monday and Tuesday, and that'll be followed up by the UJS's Juvenile Conference, and that runs, I think, like Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday. A lot of really good speakers. UJS is actually bringing in some speakers from outside of the state, and the JDAI conference will be hosting some of the sites that are looking at becoming JDAI counties, like Brown County and Davison County and a couple others. Well, they'll be coming in to learn the next steps. Plus, we'll be doing training for counties, Minnehaha County and Pennington County, us who have been doing JDAI for a while. So I actually will be gone that week because I'll be part of that conference. You got the update on the ref. I also wanted to tell you about her conference that she's having on Thursday. You can go to that if you want by signing up. She's got a couple really good sessions blocked out. It'll be at Augustana. She's got a data-driven approach to reducing disparities, trauma-informed schools, and wounded healers. And we're bringing in Dr. Martin Broken Leg, who is an international speaker. So that also would be really good. This information I'm telling you is from our meeting last week with JDAI Steering Committee, We also had an update on the school justice partnership where a few weeks ago, or probably a month ago or so, where we had a room full of people working on how to get the school districts and the, basically the state's attorney's office working together so that the school's not sending kids with charges that don't end up being charges that are charged. And so just trying to look out as a response grid for the schools and how do they deal with kids that they're having trouble with in school that don't really belong in the judicial system, and what can we do to try to find an even ground with them. And that meeting was actually really good, and they're still continuing to work on how they're going to help the schools out and let's keep them out of the justice system. And then also, as you know, I sit on the task force for the Community Justice and Mental Health Early Intervention. Which is House Bill 1183. I've been assigned to serve on the services work group with 6 other people, and we will have our first conference call in about a week or so. So no more than at that point. So I think
Thank
that's
you. Other liaison reports, Commissioner Barth?
Commissioner Karski and I sit on the Metro 911 Communications Board, and we met and approved the budget, which we'll be reviewing this evening. But one issue that came up is that we're still unsure about the future of telecom taxes that support that operation. And, it has a sunset clause. We think that the legislators will listen to us. It was suggested, I think, that group write a letter to the governor and others advocating for it. But one of the issues that has come up is that the State Department of Revenue is really uncommunicative about where we're at with these revenues. I mean, you call them up and say, are we collecting? And we'll let you know, December 18th or something. I mean, they ought to be able to give us an answer and let us know where we're at. I don't know, Dean, do you have a thought on that?
I think you said it well. It's hard to budget when you can't forecast forward. So, I mean, and I don't know how those revenues come in, but like you said, the lack of communication is what's caused the issue at a local level with planning that budgeting process for us. So, yeah, it would be a lot more helpful.
And I think we have a concern that they may not have the staff necessary to assure the correct collection of those monies. I mean, it's a priority for this county, I know, to get that 911 money to continue coming in. So,
yeah, what's not collected, we make up equally.
Any other liaison reports? Any new business? Commissioner Barth?
Commissioner Heiberger's comments about those surplus vehicles reminded me again that just recently Scott Anderson suggested sharing vehicles between departments. I mean, if planning uses their vehicles in the morning and equalization uses their vehicles in the afternoon, potentially, just like with the commission office, which shares with everybody, we could do with a smaller fleet and everyone could have newer vehicles. I think it's the kind of issue we should consider moving ahead with, and maybe having somebody assigned to keep track of vehicle usage and when they might be available.
Other comments on new business? If not, old business, Commissioner Heiberger?
I have a couple. I asked Mike Miller to come and talk just a minute about, we have had Gideon, he's sitting, you can't see him maybe.
I can't.
We had Gideon's promise in last year, and then we did not decide to go with that this year, and we've talked in our board, we had a board meeting this morning, actually didn't even touch on that. And Gideon's promise is something we want to go forward again, probably with 2018. They just need to submit a letter of intent that we would consider it in 18. It doesn't mean we're signing a contract or anything at this point, but I think our deadline's coming up, and it's something we've done in the past, and they just kind of had a change of heart, and we figured it was good to do it again. But I wanted to let the commission know that we were doing that, and asked Mike to come and just speak to it a little bit about where we're at for 2018.
Yep, thank you.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning. Mike Miller from the Public Defender's Office. Just as Commissioner Heiberger said, we would like to do a letter of intent that we'd like another Gideon's Promise attorney. It is a good opportunity for our office to get an additional attorney for a year at a very reduced rate. We've done it twice before. We haven't done it this year. the process would start, we'd start interviewing in January of 2018. And then if it were approved down the road, I believe the position would start around July when the bar exam starts next July 2018.
Thank you, Commissioner Bender.
And my memory might not be crystal clear on this, but my recollection is when Tracy was here during budgets and I asked about Gideon's promise, that she expressed at that time some significant concerns about costs and supervision and things. And so I'm wondering if something has changed since the comments she made just a couple months ago during budget.
There were just some frustration, I think, some changes in the program that at that point were a little frustrating, but I think we sort of have addressed those. The program now is requiring $6,500 over the 3-year period in additional housing costs, and requiring us to send a supervisor along with the trainee, which at that point were new requirements in the program that were additional and a little frustrating. But I think with the benefits that we get from the program, they're still worth doing that.
I'd personally like to see a memo before you guys come back that goes through the concerns that Tracy raised and the countervailing arguments with them. So I'd like to see it in writing.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And that is one of the things we talked about, and because in the board meeting we talked about this morning, is that those costs that Tracy was concerned about, they're already paying him anyway. They have to send him to training. And so that's what the training is. That was part of it. And they just said, you have to, your office, it's in the contract, you have to pay for it. We're not approving any contracts until later. All we wanted to do was just say, give them the okay that, yeah, you can interview. Or that you can submit that you would be interested in interviewing. Is there a deadline on that,
I'd like to see
Mike?
something in writing
Yeah,
before
no,
we do
that's
that.
fine.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question as well, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So I know that when we did it before, did the students or the graduates come from the same university? Would these be from diverse universities, or?
Yes, they can apply from all across the country.
Okay, thanks.
And you want to address, what was the deadline for intent?
August 25th.
Wow.
So,
It's gonna be hard to get a memo out.
That's pretty late notice, and it's a pretty abrupt change of direction. That's a little frustrating to me. So, I mean, I guess you can sign, I guess I could approve going forward with no guarantee at all that I will make that I would be in favor of approving this when you ultimately get down to it. So you'd be at risk of some time perhaps wasted.
that's what we told them this morning too. That it doesn't mean we're going to approve a position if we get it. This is just a letter of an intent that we'd be interested in, and that's as far as it would go.
Well, we have till Friday, so I think we need to do it today.
And I don't know that it needs a motion. That's why I brought it on.
I don't think we
business.
could
It's
do a
just more to
motion.
let
It's
you-
not on the,
Pardon,
it's not
yeah.
on the agenda.
Yeah, because
so.
it was just
True.
more to let you know that we had the conversation and we told them to go ahead with it, but I thought the board should know that.
Yep. And I also think probably before we approve the final budget, we need to have that conversation completed, so to speak. You comfortable with that?
Yep.
Good.
In essence, are we then if we do that as part of the budget, we'd be approving a position that we hadn't approved previously?
No,
There's no guarantee, just because we have a preliminary budget done, we got plenty of options.
And with the last two positions, those two attorneys went into open spots from attorneys that had left. So they moved into positions for people that had left.
we're not mandated to hire those people. We're just asked to give them an opportunity to apply for a position. I have one more old business.
Yes, go ahead.
I think Carol might have a
I just wanted to
make.
comment on the article in the Argus Leader yesterday about, were you going to talk about something else?
Well, I think she's following up on Mike's
Okay.
comments. I'm sorry.
I was just going to make one clarification for you, that when we got involved in Gideon's, the direction that you gave to the PDO, the public defenders, is that you didn't care if that position was filled by a Gideon participant or a regular staff person. So at that point, you never gave out additional positions for that, or that was specifically added in for those. Just as clarification, the commission can do as they choose to, but that was the history a couple years ago.
I didn't understand that. You want to say that again?
When you brought the Gideons on board, that position, and there was a lot of, because there was a lot of discussion about bringing that program on board. And the direction given to the PDO at that time was, go ahead and go with a Gideon, but it's not an extra position, it's not a new position.
No.
It is one of the positions that you already have
Yeah.
that you would fill then with a Gideon. Now, of course, the commission can choose to do however they want to, but that's a historical viewpoint, or a little bit of history.
Right, and I think that's the way I understood it. I think Commissioner Bender's concern about changes in contractual issues is exactly what we talked about at the budget hearings also. So I think that needs to be clarified before we finalize a budget, if that makes sense. And I think that's the way it was presented, or you understand that. Hopefully, that's okay, Mike?
It is, yep, we can get on that right away.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you.
Commissioner Heiberger.
Just a comment on the article that was in the Argus Leader about the voting machines. I just felt like it implied that $300,000 was coming out of the general fund for Minnehaha County's budget, which is not true. That is money set aside by the state, I believe. Set aside by the state. It is not our funding. I got comments about that article, about us whining about not having money to fulfill our budgets, and yet we were going to buy $300,000 worth of voting machines. And it's just another frustration of when it's not accurately reported.
Mr. Chairman, I'd comment on that too. That's HAVA funds, Help America Vote money, which is federal money given to the state and then allocated by county. And obviously with our population, we get a good-sized allocation.
I would say the headlines were different than the story. That's all I'll say at this point, because I did get calls about that too, and it is not a general fund allocation for us, but that's the way, if you only read the headlines, you would assume, and that's not informative, nor was it correct. So anyhow, any other old business? With that, meeting is adjourned. There is no executive session that I believe.
Motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 One extra just comment, city and county joint meeting tonight at 5. I think we have a quorum, but if somebody changes their schedule, please let Carol or Craig know immediately. Thank you.